Hello and welcome to Report World News. My name is Barnona Zarzoda. A lack of gas and electricity with the onset of winter might be typical in Uzbek provinces, but this year the problem has been felt in almost every city. During his regular meeting, President Shavkat Mirziyoyev was not thrilled to learn of the situation, hitting out at those responsible for shortcomings in preparations required for the winter season.
I don't need grandiloquent words and numbers. Our people themselves in social networks are giving an objective assessment of the work of local leaders, said Mirziyoyev. An uninterrupted power supply for industry and the regions in winter requires an additional 10 to 12 million kilowatt-hours of electricity per day. The president gave orders for the launching of 5 power units with a capacity of 900 megawatts in Tashkent, Sirdarya and Nova Angren in an attempt at addressing the electricity deficit. Power outages being experienced are mainly due to the deterioration of 60% of the distribution network and the growing demand for electricity. We all know that the problems associated with the gas system did not appear in a single day, but have been tormenting us for 30 years. But no one has the right to use this as an excuse. Our people demand gas. Most of them pay for it in a timely and honest manner, the president also remarked. Mirziyoyev then gave an instruction for gas exports to be reduced and for gas reserves to be deployed primarily to meet the needs of the population. He also ordered the transfer of 25 inefficiently operated gas deposits to investors on the basis of risk service contracts. Mirziyoyev also proposed to tighten responsibility for the illegal use of energy resources. How are we going to spend the winter this year? Today, all managers should have an answer to this question. And indeed, there are a lot of problems, he said.
Mirziyoyev separately focused on the importance of uninterrupted food supply. Criticizing the overstatement of food prices, he gave a number of instructions to prevent such cases. He also urged to strictly suspend price speculation. A special fund worth $50 million is expected to deal with the guaranteed supply of basic products to the domestic market. At the expense of these funds, reserves will be formed primarily consisting of vegetable oil and other basic products for at least 3 months. The World Health Organization says the coming COVID-19 vaccines will not end the pandemic quickly, and countries of the Western Pacific region are not guaranteed to have early access to these shots. WHO Regional Director Dr. Takeshi Kasai said on Thursday the vaccines are not a silver bullet that will end the pandemic in the near future.
There is some light at the end of a long tunnel. But these vaccines are not a silver bullet that will end the pandemic in the near future. The development of safe and effective vaccine is one thing, but producing them in adequate quantities and reaching everyone who needs them is another. Some countries in the Western Pacific, I'm aware that they start rolling out vaccines in the coming few weeks, but most of other member states in the region rollout might occur mid or late 2021, next year. WHO is working with the partners through the access to COVID-2's accelerator and its vaccine pillar COVAX to speed up the development and the manufacturing of safe and effective vaccines, and also to ensure that there is a fair and equitable access to this vaccine for all countries.
Corruption is undoubtedly one of the major factors that slows economic development and contributes to governmental instability. What is the situation in Uzbekistan? This issue was on the agenda of press conference organized by the country's Justice Ministry.
A special telegram bot created by the Ministry of Justice of Uzbekistan has received information about around 1,000 corruption offenses year to date. According to the ministry, citizens are allowed to use audio and video recordings from bodies and institutions of justice.
The Ministry of Justice has issued an order to combat corruption in the ministry's system. According to it, the rights of persons who report the corruption case are protected and guaranteed. Employees who publish the names of these individuals will be held accountable.
The ministry also briefed on the practice of countries that led international rankings in the fight against corruption.
Korrupsiyaga qarshi kurashda
Georgia is one of the states that has achieved high efficiency in the fight against corruption in a short period of time. For example, you need to get a passport within 1 day. The official deadline is 15 days. To abolish the corruption, Georgia has decided to do the following. You pay a certain fee officially to the cashier and get a passport within 1 day. Therefore, the goal of the fight against corruption is to get money on the table, which is sometimes transferred under the table.
Bukhara, which has made a significant contribution to the development of cultural, educational and religious values, has gained worldwide fame. Now, this place attracts a large number of tourists, which increases the demand for the construction of new hotels. President Mirziyoyev held a video conference to discuss the work carried out in the field of tourism, sports, as well as tasks for the coming year.
The meeting discussed measures to restore and develop the country's tourism potential after the coronavirus pandemic. Of course, hotels play a big role in this.
Bukhara is undergoing huge transformations nowadays. New hotels and buildings are being built, but we need to pay attention to one thing. All construction work should aim at improving the country's tourism potential. Therefore, it is necessary to take into account abandoned, vacant lots. No building should interfere with the objects of historical heritage.
Representatives of Prime Real Estate requested Bukhara's administration to build a hotel on Hoja Ranges Street. According to the results of 3 years of work, construction permits were obtained from 22 relevant departments.
For the reconstruction of the old land, we sent a request to the administration. In 2018, we were allocated 500 square meters and given permission to build a hotel. We also received permission from 22 relevant departments, including the Ministry of Culture. The building will look historic. After construction, the hotel will look like this.
In the last few years, comprehensive measures have been taken to create a new modern image of the Bukhara region, modernize the city and transport infrastructure, increase the number of tourist facilities, and effectively attract tourists from different countries.
Tashkent, with a population of around 2,500,000 residents, is the most populous city in the Central Asia. According to Sherzod Kattakhajayev, Deputy Director General of Makhsus Trans, the capital produces about 2,000 tons of waste per day, what strengthens the demand for active measures to update waste recycling systems in the cities, mahallas and districts.
A new waste collection system coordinated in private-public partnership will be gradually applied from March 1, 2021 and carried out in 3 phases. The first stage will be implemented in the city's mahallas, where the garbage for disposal will be separated into recyclable and non-recyclable waste, as the consumers will be provided with free colored containers. The list of items will be determined by the city's councils. The second stage is set to begin in 2022. It is planned to collect solid household waste in individual residential sectors of all territories served by the state unitary enterprise. And finally, the third stage is to start in 2023. The waste collection will be implemented in city districts with a variety of solutions for recycling items categorized as recyclable and non-recyclable, organic and others. Reduced tariffs for waste disposal will be established, taking into account waste sorted by consumers.
According to government's decision, all cars will be obliged to drive with headlights on during the daytime from January 1, 2021. Earlier, this rule was postponed as it caused public outrage.
Drivers with headlights off during daylight hours will be brought to administrative responsibility under Article 128 of the Criminal Procedure Code. For the first offense, the fine is around $10. For the second during the year, $21. Drivers will pay $64 for the third violation, and some $85 if they repeat it more than 3 times within a year. The ministers of parliament are now urging the government to abolish this innovation. They said it may create serious problems for citizens, taking into account the opinions of experts, as well as climatic conditions, the standard of living of the population, the environmental situation and the capabilities of the country.
This is the car I recently bought at the car shop. 2 months later, one fog lamp burned out. As soon as I fixed it, the second one burned out a few days later. After that, I decided to give up and not to fix them at all. If you see a car on the street with its headlights on, it means it's new. After 2 months, no one has them burned. If you need to constantly drive with the headlights on, then they will then constantly burn out. I don't think this is the right thing to do. In the summertime or in winter, in such a cold time, there is a possibility of water getting into the headlights. This causes them to burn out. In the meantime, we are not allowed to replace the lamps with the other models. In winter, it may not play a significant role, but in the summer, when it's already hot, the headlights generate additional heat. Everything inside the headlights is made of plastic in order to avoid overheating and other technical failures. It seems to me that the factories will have to take additional measures.
Hiro Iwazaki, Japanese investment advisor, may start working at Minister of Investments and Foreign Trade of Uzbekistan as a consultant on attracting foreign direct investments from next year. The agreement was reached at the meeting between Deputy Prime Minister Sardar Umurzakov and the President of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, Shinichi Kitaoka.
Within the framework of the government delegation visit to Japan, Sardar Umurzakov met with the president of HIS Holdings, Hido Sawada. The officials talked about ongoing investment projects carried out in Uzbekistan, namely a hotel construction in Tashkent's Abdullah Qadiri Park, which is expected to start operating in 2021. Taking into account the Japanese firm's extensive experience in tourism industry, the parties also studied new potential projects in the cities of Samarkand and Bukhara. The Japanese company leader added that it has been also closely considering acquiring a stake in one of the Uzbek banks, which will help to attract more Japanese investors into the Central Asian market. Japan wishes to expand cooperation in the agricultural sector by implementing new projects that should boost export potential of the country. Mr. Kitaoka proposed to funnel extra $200 million to the implementation of the second phase of the value-added chain in the horticultural sector project, which proved to be successful in creating 85 modern greenhouses and employing 11,000 people in Uzbekistan. JICA president promised to attract more leading Japanese companies to implement joint projects using advanced Japanese experience and technologies. The Japanese side also expressed its readiness to launch the JICA Chair Grant Program that will deliver master classes by leading scientists and experts and increase the number of scholarship programs for Uzbek students in Japan.
Remittance sent to Uzbekistan in January and November amounted to $5.44 billion, marking a 2% or $85 million decline year-on-year, the country's central bank said on December 16. The course of the coronavirus pandemic affected the volume of remittance that flowed. Remittances dropped sharply in March-April but began a slow recovery in May, eventually nearing the level of August-September 2019. Remittances sent to Uzbekistan during the first 9 months of this year reached $4.3 billion, down 4% year-on-year. The absence of the abrupt reduction in remittances may be explained by the fact that a certain part of remitted money was arriving in the country in cash prior to the pandemic. With the introduction of lockdown and quarantine restrictions, a greater part of the money was sent via banks than was the case in previous years, the regulator said. Osman Mesden, chairman of the Turkey-Uzbekistan Interparliamentary Friendship Group at the Turkish Grand National Assembly, shared his view on current reforms and their positive impact on bilateral cooperation.
As an expert on Central Asian studies, I can say that Uzbekistan has been carrying out reforms competently without false promises, involving civil society to take an active part in the process of building a new, strong country, Osman Mesden said. The Turkish politician says that the progressive transformations in human rights issues, liberalizing the economy and developing the social sphere have led to a new system of relations between the state and society without political and socio-economic upheavals. The present enthusiasm to further deepen the transformation is the result of the decisive, comprehensive state policy carried out over the past years, widely supported by the Uzbek people, the politician concluded.
According to Central Bank of Uzbekistan, official reserves of the country as of December the 1st amounted to $32.9 million, international reserves $31.9 billion. The reserves are still very poorly diversified. Almost everything is stored in the form of gold and foreign currency. FX reserves are declining for the 4th consecutive month. In the meantime, gold prices have reached their peak for the past 10 years amid the pandemic. Uzbekistan became the absolute leader in gold sales in July. According to experts, as the situation with coronavirus stabilizes in the world, gold prices will continue to decline. Marcus Garvey, head of commodity strategy at Macquarie Investment Bank, told FT that he positively assesses the prospect of global economic growth in 2021, and he believes that the price of gold has passed its peak. Analysts expect the price to fall to $1,550 a troy ounce next year, which is about 17% below the current level.
President-elect Joe Biden will get the coronavirus vaccine as soon as next week, transition officials said on Wednesday. Biden is expected to receive the jab in public as authorities attempt to build up public confidence in the procedure. The first doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine became available in the United States this week and have been set aside for medical staff, nursing homes and government officials. Biden told reporters on Wednesday that he did not want to get ahead of the line, but at 78 he is in the high-risk category and he is also keen to show the vaccine is safe. A recent Reuters Ipsos poll showed that only 61% of respondents would be open to receiving a vaccine. Scientists have said that to reach herd immunity, more than 70% of the public must be exposed to the virus. Biden has vowed to make the fight against the pandemic his top priority when he takes office next month. Surging COVID-19 infections and hospitalizations are driving healthcare systems to breaking point across much of the country. Daily deaths topped 3,000 on Tuesday for the third time in a week. President Donald Trump has often downplayed the severity of the pandemic, but White House officials said he would receive the vaccine, though they weren't sure when, while Vice President Mike Pence is going to get the jab in a public setting on Friday.
The World Health Organization says China has welcomed a team of investigators into the origins of the coronavirus, expected to arrive there early next year. A WHO official said Thursday that the organization was in talks with Beijing. It's been nearly a year since China reported the first cases of pneumonia from an unknown cause in Wuhan to the WHO and closed a market where the novel coronavirus is believed to have emerged. The United States has accused China of hiding the outbreak's extent and has demanded for a transparent investigation. It's also criticized the WHO for allowing Chinese scientists to do the first phase of preliminary research into the virus. When the January mission launches, it will include 12 to 15 international experts from several countries including Russia, Australia and Japan. The WHO says the team will examine evidence, including human and animal samples collected by Chinese researchers. But the investigation may be a difficult one. Keith Hamilton, a WHO expert specializing in animal health, told reporters Tuesday that doing animal surveillance would be a bit like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Another WHO expert added that the mission would like to interview market workers and how they were infected with the virus. Meanwhile, Chinese state media have suggested the virus existed abroad before it was discovered in Wuhan, as authorities there have found the virus on frozen food packaging from overseas and have cited scientific reports that it had been circulating in Europe last year.
Texas and 9 other states sued Google on Wednesday, accusing it of illegally working with Facebook to boost its already dominant online advertising business.
This Goliath of a company is using its power to manipulate the market.
The antitrust lawsuit was filed by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who said in a Facebook video that Google, quote, eliminated its competition and crowned itself the king of online advertising.
Google repeatedly used its monopolistic power to control pricing, engage in market collusions to rig auctions, in a tremendous violation of justice.
Google called the Texas lawsuit meritless and said, quote, we will strongly defend ourselves from his baseless claims in court. Facebook did not immediately respond to a request for comments. The Texas lawsuit is the second major complaint from regulators against Google and the fourth in a series of federal and state lawsuits aimed at reining in alleged bad behavior by big tech platforms. The states asked Google, which is owned by Alphabet and controls a third of the global online advertising industry, to compensate them for damages and is seeking structural relief, which is usually interpreted as forcing a company to divest some of its assets. Wednesday's action also raises the legal stakes for Google, which is now expected to face a third antitrust lawsuit from another group of attorneys general on Thursday, according to a source familiar with the matter, over anti-competitive behavior.
China is a more familiar target, but now the US Treasury has Switzerland in its sights. On Wednesday, Washington labelled the country as a currency manipulator. That means it's suspected of deliberately devaluing its currency against the dollar to win advantage. Vietnam was also added to the list. The action comes as the global slowdown skews trade flows and widens US deficits with trading partners. That is an irritant for President Donald Trump, who came to office promising to narrow trade gaps. To be labelled a manipulator, countries must have at least a $20 billion trade surplus with the US. They also have to have a record of significant intervention in currency markets. The Treasury refused to say whether the two countries would face any sanctions as a result of the designation, but it also extended the list of places it was keeping a close eye on as potential manipulators. Taiwan, Thailand and India went on that list, joining China, Japan, Germany and others. Switzerland, at least, seems undaunted. The Swiss National Bank denied manipulating the country's franc currency and said it would continue its monetary approach unchanged. Even so, the franc jumped to 5-year highs against the dollar after Wednesday's news.
And this was our last report. Thank you for watching and goodbye.